Hello, friends. I'm Maggie Ostara. I'm a sovereignty mentor and a human design expert. And I want to share with you today 5 themes that I identified from doing a whole flurry of human design readings recently. I did a reading special and I had a whole bunch of women who came for readings. And it was really interesting to me, the themes that came out of that. And so I wanted to share that with you to get a pulse on really what's happening with women at midlife. Most of these women were somewhere between 40 and early 70s, even. And there were themes that really ran through all of these readings. And I wanted to share them so that you would, number one, maybe feel less alone if you're like, oh my gosh, there's all these other women who are feeling this way. And also so that maybe you could understand a little bit better some of the challenges that you might be feeling. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one I'm calling midlife as a sacred threshold. And I want to mention this one because it really kind of frames the whole conversation that I've been having with these different women. And I wanted to bring this to the fore because one of the things I said in the reading special was if you want to find out more about what's going on with you related to your Uranus opposition or your Chiron return or your second Saturn return, please come and let's explore that together. And so several of them did that, but even the ones who didn't mention that, I was definitely looking at that because there are these life cycles. And you probably heard of the first Saturn return happens around the end of the 20s. Most people have heard of that. The others, maybe not so much unless you've really kind of been into astrology and into human design. The Uranus opposition that happens right in the early 40s, Uranus is all about intuition. Uranus is all about breaking free of the confines that we have. It's all about awakening. And so Uranus comes in and really starts to stimulate intuition right in that early 40s period. And then Chiron comes in around your 50s and saying, what haven't you healed yet? That starts to really come up for you. And then during this whole period, we start to move from the south node to the north node as our primary orientation, as our destiny. And so there are these really critical parts. And what I noticed was all of these women were actually navigating these different alignments, whether they were aware of them or not. So one of the things I would suggest for you is for you to check that out for yourself. Find out what is going on for you at your Uranus opposition, your Chiron return in particular. And for some women, the second Saturn return, like that was really important for me, which is in the 50s, can also be really important. And that's definitely something I can support you with if you decide to come to me for a reading. The second theme is about being disconnected from the body and disconnected from intuition. Virtually every woman that I spoke with had some way in which they were suppressing or rejecting definition that was in their charts and also their inner authority. I always ask people about their inner authority because this is one of the fundamentals of human design, and it is how we're designed to make our best decisions. And even people who have been studying human design for a long time a lot of times haven't really dialed into working with their authority on a regular basis. All human design authorities are intuitive. None of them are logical or rational or reasonable or strategic or anything like that. They're all intuitive. And so many women had a difficult time knowing how to identify and really trust what is their authority and what isn't true intuition from them from other things that they feel, like whether they feel anxiety or they hear voices in their head that say, oh, no, that's a scary thing. Don't go that way. You're going to really lose out if you do that. And so there's a challenge in being able to identify what is true intuition. What is your body really telling you versus the conditioning that you have? And so many of us have rejected parts of the energy that we have defined in our charts because they're not culturally accepted or not deemed culturally valuable. So I saw even with women who had a lot of definition in the intuitive parts of their chart, and of course everybody has an authority, even for them, they weren't necessarily really connecting to that. So one of the things I would suggest is make sure that you identify and really learn how to work with your human design authority. For all generators, whether you're an emotional generator, a manifesting generator, or a pure generator, your sacral authority is going to be your number one authority. energy. And you may need to learn how to work with your emotional definition if you are emotionally defined. But whatever it is, really explore that and work with it, because it can become like your best friend. All of the other types really work well by being able to talk things through with a high quality listener. Even manifestors do well with that. Of course, they kind of have that inner impulse. They can just go for it. But a lot of times manifestors I've known do benefit from being able to talk it through with people. But in any event, we really need to release the conditioning. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but release the conditioning that has sent us away from our true inner guidance and sent us towards really looking outside of ourselves for what's true and for what's right. Third theme had to do with kind of overgiving and people pleasing and being a peacemaker. Of course, this is a role that many, many women have been socialized into, and there's many reasons for that. And in human design, that can come from having an open G center. It can come from having an open emotional solar plexus in particular. But just in general, culturally speaking, women are conditioned to really put other people first. And so we see that when people come for a reading as well. And very often there was a theme that came through where women were at this point in life where they were really waking up and they were starting to dive into their human design and into their authority and wanting to lay claim to their intuition. And then they would start to create more boundaries with the people around them. There's a lot of relationship navigating that was going on. And sometimes the people in their lives really were not happy when they were saying, I'm not going to do that role anymore. I'm not going to show up and put everybody else first before me. I'm going to actually start putting myself first. And so I just want you to know, if you're in that place where you're navigating, wanting to have more time for yourself, wanting more attention for yourself, saying, you know what, I've gotten really disconnected from what makes me happy, from what I even want. I did talk to some women who were like, I said, well, what is it that you really want? And they were like, I don't know. Like they just really didn't know. And so it's important to be able to create boundaries so that you can start to hear what's actually coming to you from your inner guidance. And one recommendation I would have around that is to, if you can't get to the point where you feel like you know what you want, to at least try to get to neutrality. See if you can create more space for yourself. Let other people take care of their business a little bit more themselves, rather than you being the person that everybody comes to solve their problems. And if you can get to a more kind of spacious and neutral place, then I think you will find that you will have bubbling up inside of you more desire, more passion, more a sense of what will bring you alive. And then to follow really where that energy is leading you. You don't have to know where it's going to take you. You don't have to know things, far out in the future. You really just need your next step. But one of the first things you want to do is like I said, create loving but firm boundaries that isn't about judging anybody or sending them away or making them bad or wrong. It's just about you saying, you know what, I'm going to make myself my own priority. The fourth theme really has to do with kind of what's in the way of us being able to live our human design, access our intuition, and really awaken to the truth of who we are. And it's unhealed trauma for so many of us. This is not a surprise. And yet so often we sort of turn away from that because maybe we're not really sure how to address that. But I saw this as a theme of one woman after the next, after the next. And of course, when you get closer to your Chiron return, which happens around age 50, this really comes up for people. And so we also have all this energy that is coming through the planet right now, through the solar system, which is raising the frequency and really bringing that unhealed places inside ourselves up to the surface. So if you're feeling a lot of triggering coming up or reactivity coming up, or just kind of this sense of like, things are hard or things are struggling, what you want to do is not believe it and kind of dive into it, but be like, okay, what am I clearing? What am I purging? What can I let go of right now? Sometimes we do need to connect with the wounded parts of ourselves so that they can express in order to heal. You just don't want to spend a lot of time there. I did recommend to a number of these women a self-connecting process that I have, which I can actually share the link with that with you. If you just put self-connecting process into the comments below, I'd be happy to share that with you. But it's a way based in nonviolent communication for you to really heal those wounded parts of you just by giving them your own attention, giving them your own love, because generally those parts of us will heal and evolve when they're heard and when they're received, when they're able to express themselves. And it's not really like you have to do a whole lot. They just need to be received in order to be able to let go of the trauma that they've been holding on to. And then they can come in and really integrate into who you are now. Fortunately, as a culture, we're becoming more and more aware of how much trauma we've really all carried. And so I want you to know that it's not, if you know you have trauma, or you suspect, or you know you have things in the way of what you want to do, chances are there's a part of you in there that's not ready because it's still attached to this sense of wounding from the past. And the thing is when we have that unhealed trauma, it tethers us to the past, right? It holds us back and we can't really move forward. So it's really important for us to be doing a lot of healing around this. This is why I trained in the neurosomatic intelligence work, so that, in our Sovereign Sisterhood, we're doing a lot of healing around, our kind of deep imprints. And there are so many different ways, like we do Kundalini yoga, also all kinds of different guided meditations and breath work, for example. So find a way for you to be really healing yourself, releasing that trauma, making peace inside yourself. This is really a big one. There are many different modalities that are out there. There's things like EMDR. You have to go to a therapist for that. There's EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. People find that very effective. So whatever it is that works for you, but make this a priority. This is really one of the key things that we are being called to do here on planet Earth right now. And never, never, never feel like this is selfish for you to be giving yourself the gift of your own attention so that you can heal. Because remember, you as a healed person can give more, right? You can. And you also really deserve it just because you are you. And finally, theme number 5 is really about contribution. It's about a longing to have life be meaningful, to have a sense of purpose, to have a sense of belonging, to have a sense of really being connected from a deeply authentic place. I think one of the things that happens at this midlife awakening is a recognition that, yes, you may have been putting out a lot and caring for people, or making sure that you're, really doing well at work, or whatever that is. But it may not be the thing that is really what your soul fire is calling you for, the thing that is going to make you feel the most fulfilled. And I think that this is part of this awakening that happens because, Uranus comes in here and says, hey, what really matters to you? Let's break you out of all of that conditioning that has made you conform to things that aren't even, valuable to you. And how can you awaken to your deeper truths? And then live your life from that place, right? And then a Chiron is, of course, saying, yeah, let's get you healed so that you can do that. I heard about legacy projects. I heard about things that people have been desiring to do for, decades. I heard about projects that people are starting to work on. There was a lot of new activity. Sometimes they felt stuck around it. And that's why I wanted to mention these other themes, because if you do have unhealed trauma, if you do feel disconnected from your intuition and your body, sometimes those really put the brake on your desire to move forward with new projects. So they're actually quite related to each other. But if you have a project that you're like a legacy project or something, you're like, I've always wanted to do this. I talked to one woman who'd been thinking about writing a book for quite a while. I would say really go for it, because we need the wise women like you to be stepping forward and sharing what it is, your vision of the new earth, what you would like to see. I did speak to one woman who had a lot of leadership energy in her chart, and it was even in where her North Node was going into the gate 31, which is one of the primary leadership gates in the chart. And she was like, leadership, And as we talked about it, it was because she doesn't like what the leadership that she's seeing on the world stage, which, sure, I understand that. She goes, well, I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do that. And I don't like the way they're doing that. And I said, well, if you don't like that, what would you like? Right? This is one of the things Abraham Hicks always says, right? If you know what you don't like, you know what you do like. I don't actually think it's that simple a lot of times, but it is a clue. Like if you're like, I don't want a world where there is this hierarchy where, the majority of the world's resources belong to just a few people and a lot of people are struggling to pay their rent and make sure that they have food on the table. Like, I don't like that. Like for me, I'm a big advocate of universal basic income. That is something that I stand behind, right? Can't bring it into being myself, but I can start putting energy behind that and I can start seeing where people are doing that and I can look for where that's happening in the world. And so for you can look at, well, what would I want to do? What would I want to come into being? And for me, universal income, it may come into being in the next few years. I don't know. But I want to put my energy into it because I want to pull that future to us, because I really believe that no one should have to show up the way that we're currently being demanded around the planet in order to be able to have a place to live and to have food to eat. I mean, it's just not a kind way to be. So whatever it is for you, when you look at something, right, if animals are being treated a certain way or children being treated a certain way or whatever it is, to just get behind it, because I saw these women really wanting to do that. Some of them were feeling stuck because part of their survival brain, right, had the foot on the brake, but they still were doing that. And this is a really laudable thing to be doing at this time of life. So pulling this all together, I saw women who were on a spiritual path. Some of them were earlier on their journey. Some of them were farther along. All of them wanted to understand what was more authentic to them. They were giving some time and attention to that, although sometimes it was very difficult for them to be carving out time from their families, and whether that was, children or partners or their parents or whatever it is. But they were doing that and they were making a time for that. A lot of them really did want to tap into their intuition. They wanted to live as a more integrated being. They wanted their creativity. They wanted their intuition, but they were aware that they didn't have a lot of confidence in it. Sometimes they weren't sure what was intuition and what wasn't. They really felt this was an important part of their development, but they didn't quite know what to do. And they weren't sure what was blocking their intuition. And so this is one of the things that I talked to them about a lot and gave them a whole series of recommendations that helped them to open their intuition. So the good news is that you are wanting to have your intuition come up, that you are looking at this as an awakening, that you are wanting to free yourself from the conditioning that has forced you into conformity in ways that you no longer want to do, that you're listening to those impulses that are coming through with these life cycle awakenings that are opportunities for you to really kind of break out of the ways that you have confined yourself, because you thought that's what you needed to do in order to survive or in order to be successful. But even though some of those women felt a fair amount of struggle, they were also committed and they wanted to really go deeper. So doing these readings really inspired me to create a new guide for you. It's called Whose Voice Is That? How to Tell the Difference Between Your Intuition, Fear, and Overthinking. And you can now join the waitlist. I'm going to go ahead and put it at the end of the video, and I'll put it down in the description where you can just go and let me know that you want to find out about it when it becomes available. I'll have it done soon. I'm excited about it, so I keep adding more pieces to it. But this will be available to you soon. And what it'll do is it'll help you be able to identify and know what are those different voices that are in your head and what are they trying to do for you, because they're all trying to support you in some way, but they often have different agendas. Sometimes they really come into conflict with each other. You have one telling you to do one thing, one telling you to another thing. Sometimes your head is just noisy and you can't really hear any voice distinctly. And so this guide will help you to identify what the different voices are, what their agendas are, and how can you work with them more effectively so that you can hear that more quiet voice of intuition and you can know how to foster it and bring it forward so that you can really trust it and live your life guided by that deep sense of your own soul fire that is becoming increasingly in charge of your life the farther you get along on your spiritual path. The guide's going to be free to you, and I hope that this report has been beneficial for you to lay out these different themes, that you maybe recognize yourself in them so that many of us are working with this right now. It's not just you, and there's nothing wrong with you. Didn't do anything wrong. You're just on your journey, as all of us are. So I hope that you will go ahead and get on the wait list, and I can't wait to hear how this is going to support you. Will help you to connect with your own inner authority by human design and your very best way of making decisions. And let me know how it goes. I always love to hear from you. So please do give it a thumbs up and leave a comment, and I'll get right back to you. I read all my comments and I do my best to respond to all of them. All right, my friends, many, many blessings. Much love. Bye for now.